Cool. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the pod by Shiptember, and I'm delighted to welcome on concept artist Jordan William Hughes. Welcome, sir.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Excited to chat with you. What initially triggered this was you mentioned about a certain project, which I'm sure we'll get to, that was obviously space related and spaceship related and all that kind of good
Yes.
stuff. So it was like, yes, let's geek out about that. But yeah, before we get into all that good stuff, let's get all the awesome pleasantries out the way. If you wouldn't mind letting everybody know who you are and what you do.
I'm an architect and concept artist living in London, originally from the Lake District. So I'm from the Northwest. I've still got the accent, thankfully. I've been here about 12 years now. And yeah, fully qualified architect is maybe something we can discuss, but
Yeah,
architecture and concept art is very similar at the early stages. And I eventually made the big change and I'm now a professional concept artist.
sick. Um, how come you use both titles? Is that like how you prefer it to be?
But I guess, honestly, architecture is an 8-year degree, and anyone that has studied it and gone through it's 2 master's degrees. It's a huge chunk of your life. It's a little bit like being a doctor. You
Yeah,
are only allowed to say you're an architect if you are. So because I've gone through it all,
nice,
that's my title. I'm always going to use it. I feel
nice.
like I've earned it. Um, and I currently do work as a concept artist, but I work predominantly in architecture. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Sick. Yep, no, I've always heard stories and architects that I mentioned, spoken to, and also mentioned to as well. Like, it's not just like, yeah, you just go in, spend a year, and you get the label. It is obviously, well, a decade almost commitment. What led to that journey though? Was that something that you was passionate about?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people and probably like a lot of concept artists, I grew up playing The Sims, making my own house, coming up with my future mansion that I was, of course, going to live in. So I've always been someone that does a little bit of that. My dad's actually a kitchen designer.
Sick.
So immediately from a very young age, I was drawing, I guess, plans and sections, not official plans and sections, but those kind of technical drawings to where's my swimming pool going to go? Where's my garage going to be with all my cars and all that stuff. So I've always been really interested in it. I've been at a long journey. I'm older than I look, and I've always been a bit of a dreamer. You should have my mum on the podcast because
Oh,
she talk
sick,
a lot about that. But
sick.
um, the first dream was being a Power Ranger, of course, like everybody. Step one. Then I wanted to be a professional cricketer, and I actually spent quite a few years kind of pivoting away from traditional education. Went to a sports academy. That was the dream. I was going to be a cricketer,
Wow.
and I just fell a little bit short. Found myself at a university open day and spoke to someone who was pitching architecture. And I was like, oh, that sounds really easy and a lot of money and amazing. Um, one of those things was correct. But I kind of got taught into it and felt madly in love with it. The idea of just designing and going home every night and working on your own kind of project was just something I fell in love with. And I've been on that journey ever since. It's pivoted a few times, but that's been the clear direction.
Oh, wicked. And how was the course? Like, when you took the course, did because obviously, like you said, like it sounded like it was something that would appeal to you, and obviously, at the other end of it, it's something that you continue to do. But what was that training like? Like, did it fulfill your expectations and even exceed them, or was it torture?
It definitely wasn't torture. I mean, hours, you put more hours in than being a doctor, being a lawyer. Like it
Yeah.
is all encompassing. Um, but I'm sure you understand, it's because you love it. Like you could
Mm.
half-ass it and you could go home after a few hours. Um, but it just became my entire life. I stopped playing sport. I stopped doing anything else. It was just
Wow.
architecture and design. And it's really communal, especially I'm really glad. So I did my undergrad, so 3 parts. I did my undergrad at Preston,
Uh huh.
Central Lancashire. I did my first master's at University of Greenwich, and I did my second master's at Westminster. And the first one, the reason I'm talking about the first one so much is because um, Preston was such a university town. I went as a complete child, very nervous, didn't know how to speak, hated the idea of presenting, but
Oh
I
wow.
wanted to try designing. I couldn't really communicate to people. I was so shy. And over that course of 3 years, you just become one big family, and everyone's just pouring their hearts into these
Sick.
projects. And Preston's got a great nightlife as well. You could go out, big night out, £5. That was kind of
Nice.
how it was back in the day. So that was very much the first of the three, which was just purely getting kind of growing as a human being. I think a lot of the university is just growing as a human being. And I started to lose that kind of sense of being a little bit of a fraud. I guess when you kind of leave education and go and try and be a cricketer for 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
and everybody else feels like they've got these incredible GCSEs and college results, I did feel a little bit like an imposter, like I think we all do.
Mm.
But over the course of that 3 year degree, I realized everybody's lying a little bit. Everybody's kind of being something they're not. And at the end of it, I just felt certain things I was not as good as other students, but design, I felt like I could compete really easy.
Mm.
So I left with a big kind of leap and big step in my development. And then I had to move to London. So the next step is you need to work professionally. So you need to work professionally for a year before you can then do your master's. And the best place to get any kind of architectural work is not the Lake District. It is definitely London. Um, so that was 12 years ago, and I moved to London, got a job at a large architecture company, an American company, started working as an interior designer, junior architect, and kind of developed that way. And then, yeah, I don't want to bore you with my life story, but
No, no, no.
it's a
This
funny
is no. Please
story.
go. Carry on. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, so then essentially got into the University of Greenwich. And Greenwich, if you've been, is the most magical place. I love Greenwich. I moved there, and the university course was really speculative. Some of the university courses, it's how do we design this building? And it's very
Hmm.
technical. And Greenwich was famous for being a little bit of film, a little bit of design. I did spaceship. So my final year of my master's, I actually did space architecture, which kind of really will show in my work that we get onto later. But it's this idea of really pouring development and research and precedent and taking that architectural look, but applying it to something quite silly or quite expansive. So I did a big generational space architecture degree, basically, as my master's.
Nice.
And then the reality of kind of fully qualifying. I worked as a few years as a fully qualified architect. The final year of the degree, it's crazy. It's just a ball. So you've spent 7 years
Okay.
becoming quite a good designer, and it is very concept art. It's here's my project,
Yes.
here's my soul, here's all the research I've done, here's the big idea, here's some at the time renders or Photoshop. Um, and in the final year, you just become a lawyer. And I hated it, and I wasn't really suited to that. I'm dyslexic. It just wasn't for me. I spent 2 years then in professional practice. So at this point, I spent like 7, 8 years in professional practice, but fully as an architect. And I just did nothing but detail staircases for a year. That was it. And that was the end. So that was the big moment, the big catalyst for, okay, I need to go back a step.
Interesting. Um, Regarding the lawyer bit, I guess like is that just pretty much more for the regulation side of things, or is it more because it's like I'm just assuming here, but like it's a dated kind of like educational structure, and they're just copy and pasted from probably over the last couple of centuries or something.
Well, the lawyer aspect of it is you need to not get sued, essentially. This is the title of architect. If I'd have said I'm an architect, you could go on a register, and if I wasn't, I could be taken to court for 20, 30 grand. So there's immediately that kind of protection. But it does also mean that if I do some work for you, if I would develop an extension in your house and it collapsed and I'd signed it,
Yeah.
I can be sued. So
Okay.
suddenly it starts to get very, I guess, dangerous if you're not good at it.
Uh huh.
And I was good at it, but I was good at it in the safety net of a big company where I was
Mm.
one of a big team. But there's different kinds of architects, and the architects who will do your extension might be one person, one individual, and that takes a lot more risk.
So even though like with the degrees, I guess like you said, when it's done, you can officially broadcast and call yourself an architect. But
Yeah.
when did you personally feel like one? At what stage?
You don't, because one day you're not, and the next day you are, and
Mm.
that is between years 8 and 1 week. So it's a little strange. Again, definitely felt like I knew what I was doing. I
Yeah.
felt confident to call myself an architect, but if I was always cautious that if a friend is like, "Oh, can you do this for me?" You're like, "Well, I can, but just so you know, I'm this and this and this."
Mm.
And you can't know everything as well. There's different architects that specialize in different things. I actually preferred interior design, and I think a lot of architects do. The
Yeah.
nitty gritty of the concrete and the foundations and the planning permission is not as exciting as here's a beautiful space, here's the textures, here's the lighting.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, it just wasn't quite suited for me 100%.
Interesting. So when did the concept art side of things started to emerge? Because like you said, like there's a lot of if the Venn diagram is almost like a circle, like you said, like between the two things. But when did you kind of like hear that side of your see that side of your personality or your creative personality and be like, okay, let's branch into that a bit further or give that some more life?
Always wanted to be a concept artist, never thought it was possible. Like a
Okay.
lot of people, I think I grew up watching the Star Wars prequels, and you would get the special editions, and they would have 2 hours of the art department. And I remember watching it with my mum, being 5 or 6 years old, being like, "That's it. How do I do that?" Watching it again at 10, how do I do that? But it
Nice.
just was. If back then, everything just felt so distant. It felt like it was in America. It felt like you had to be the
Mm.
greatest hand drawer of all time. It felt, it just didn't feel remotely achievable. So it wasn't something I followed at all. The big catalyst was actually COVID. So at the time where I'd worked a year on the staircases, at the time when it was the same time the world kind of collapsed and COVID
Yeah.
happened. And I just went, you know what? Let's have a look. I am working in my bedroom on staircases for a few months. Come on, like, what can I do? So I started doing a few Gumroad tutorials, some just speed painting and things like that. And then I stumbled across Brainstorm. I don't know if you know Brainstorm.
Yep. Yep.
What? I believe I'm right in saying at the time it was in person. So Brainstorm used to be all in person.
Mm.
And because of COVID, it all went online. So suddenly people were saying, "Oh, this is online. We can do this now." Um, and I just went, you know what? I'm doing it. I quit my job. I moved back home to the Lake District for a year, and I spent a year doing brainstorm classes, from 3 a.m. till 6 or 7 a.m. Because
That's
the time
sick.
difference, you want to be live. I understand quickly if you don't do it live, you're not accountable, and it's
Mm.
just not the same. So I felt like I had to do it, committed. I was serious about it for a year. Um, Ruined my sleep, ruined my social life, but I kind of dived in, and I did a series of classes and brainstorm, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Sick. And how did that? So that was like a year purely. And what were you looking for with that? Were you trying to like just understand the whole craft of it, or were you trying to almost repurpose your skills to that side of things?
I guess I was trying to see where I was, because I
Yeah.
was aware I wasn't starting from scratch, because I designed for 10 years at that point.
Yeah.
And I felt a lot of the artists I met on some of my first classes were amazing artists, but they couldn't communicate, or they were very introverted, and suddenly I was like, okay, I've got these life skills I can present. I could speak to people, I can
Nice.
organize. The architectural stuff started to become more and more prevalent. Um, but also I'd never met any concept artists.
Mm.
I'd lived in London, but again, it felt like a bubble that I was just not in. So I was like, how do I get into this bubble? How do I meet people? And ironically, the best way and the closest bubble I could get into was in America,
Uh-huh.
in Brainstorm, speaking to these people at 3 a.m. So that was the big thing I did. I took a range of classes. I did a few fundamentals just to make sure I could actually use a pen and paper.
Hmm.
But then also I really got into Blender. I spoke to Don Lay and Mickey. I can't remember it. Javid. He's
Hmm.
an amazing artist. Mickey, I could
Yeah.
just call him Mickey. And I did a few classes on world building, and that was okay. Let's get into Blender. Let's get into Photoshop. And then
Sick.
suddenly my confidence just went, because that
Nice.
was just more me. Um, yeah, and that kind of really springboarded me into it.
Interesting. Like the confidence side of things. What do you think it was that helped you, like you said, like just take off? Like, was there a specific thing, or did it just feel fluent to you, that particular workflow?
Yeah, I'd been 3D modeling in other programs for 10 years.
Oh,
And sketching is something I've always done, but I do chicken sketches. I'm
yeah.
like, it's me getting an idea on paper, but it's not the final output. Um, but 3D modeling was something I'd always done. I use a program called Rhino, which is
Yeah,
very
remember that?
popular back in the day.
Yeah.
I used AutoCAD, which is terrible for creativity, but really good for sections and elevations. And anyone that works in architecture, you use a program called Revit, which is the ugliest program in the world, but you physically build an entire building in it. And it's very collaborative. So at that point, I'd spent so long in 3D, and I was good at Photoshop. I was confident in Photoshop already. That as soon as the classes went from do 500 drawings a day, which was quite intense, and I really
Mm,
tried and I did my best. I improved, but I just felt like I was starting from the back of the queue. And then as soon as I went to class of not just the technical aspect of using 3D and Photoshop, but can you design? A lot of students I realized were really good at rendering and really good at producing high quality artwork,
mm,
but everything was a copy. And I never felt like mine was a copy, even if I tried to. So I felt like that was a bit of a boost in.
mm. We have, I can fully relate to your journey into experience. It's very parallel to kind of stuff that I experienced. Although instead of architecture, it was transport design. So again, another kind of like real world ish setting. But then, yeah, like similar to yourself, if I had to look back, it was never to be wanting to design cars for real. It was design cars for fake, like for movies and games and all that kind of stuff, make believe stuff. Um, but you said like you left work. Was that a sabbatical thing, or you completely left your job to do this?
No, I left my job. I just went for it. It was COVID. It was the moment to do it, I felt.
Yeah.
And I knew I would have to move back home. So that was the big thing. Like, no job. I wasn't at the stage where I could freelance as a concept artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved home. And the one thing that kept me afloat was I actually freelanced as an architect, and I did the occasional bit of interior design.
Cool.
I did one or two pieces of artwork for some little indie films and stuff like that. I did one thing for a little video game, but they were a week of work, a few days of work. I essentially put my life savings and was like, this is my year for me, and that's kind of how it went.
Oh, sick. So was this something that like you were anticipating? That you're just waiting for the right moment?
I was anticipating, but also putting it off. And
Hmm.
I do suspect if COVID hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have gone for it. It felt like
Interesting.
such a moment for everyone of sink or swim. And are you going
Yeah.
to get depressed and stay in your bedroom and not and do the same thing? It was a big moment and I just took a leap.
And was it more because of a security net kind of thing? Like you had something stable, you had something that you built up, or was it something else?
Why I wouldn't leave?
Yeah. If COVID never happened, for example, or some similar kind of event that basically pushed you outside.
I'm sure there's a clever phrase for this that I don't have in my head at the moment, but I was so invested in architecture and I knew I was a designing architect. I was not a technical architect. I was not
Right.
a, so I just knew always I could do this. Um, but I'd been doing it for 8, 9 years, 10 years at that point, and think of the student debt, think of the hours, think of the money. And there's always this feeling of you're too old. I felt like I was too old at 16. I felt like I'm too old at 20. I feel like I'm too old at 32.
Mm,
I feel like I'm too old at like, I think at every age, you kind of
mm,
feel like it's too late. Um, and at
interesting.
that point, I'd committed. I had the title. I felt like I was doing what I should be doing. And concept art still, I was still outside the bubble. I still couldn't even see the bubble. And
Mm,
as soon as I could see the bubble, I was like, okay, maybe I'll have a look. Let's see if we can get in there. But at that point, when you're an architect and you're working crazy hours in the architectural bubble, there's not much outside of that, to be honest.
mm. When did concept art work for you? When was the time where it went from training to I'm a concept artist now and it's making a living, or wherever you took it to?
Well, the first step was actually getting employed as a concept artist. So I got employed 3 years ago, full time, as a concept artist at a huge international architectural company,
Mm,
who I can't name, but they're a
sure.
very big one. And they hired me specifically as a concept designer, concept artist. I went to the interview and I was like, "Is this just architecture wrapped as some?" But no, it's a full art department. It's 100% concept art.
Cool.
So immediately just putting that on my LinkedIn and having that on my Instagram felt like, oh, okay, I am. Now I am. But I guess one of the most pivotal moments actually, we're very lucky. We do a lot of in-house training, and we get some of the biggest and best guys to come in-house and work with us almost one-on-one. Pablo Dominguez and Finney McManus came in
Wow.
um, separately over a few years for 3 or 4 days each. And I remember speaking to Pablo, wonderful guy, amazing artist. And he, again, just someone that felt like in a bubble far away was suddenly in front of me speaking. Really nice guy, really approachable. Um, and him looking at my work and saying, "This is good, this is not good, this is good." Just hearing the word good from someone
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
was, okay, that's good. That makes me feel good. Um,
Sick.
and yeah, giving the direction and kind of the support from people like that, little likes on your Instagram from those kind of people, keeping tabs on you, you start to feel like you're doing something. And suddenly I look at my work and I'm finally at the point where I look at my art station or I look at even my work in progress. I'm like, it's not bad. It's
Mm,
okay. I'm doing good work. So that feels nice.
nice. And do you have any kind of like overarching kind of like goal or kind of place where you want to be? It's quite an abstract question, but like with your art or with your voice as a concept artist, is there much more to go, or is it just more like exploration and just naturally growing as an artist?
No, I think there's a lot more to go. And like, I'm really excited about all. I feel like I finally feel like I have the package needed for all this stuff.
Yes.
Um, and I am realizing more and more like the architectural professionalism and stuff like that. It really does help. So I feel like there's a lot of room to grow. I've done a few bits in video games, which was amazing. Absolutely loved it. I've done one or two things in film, not really, but I would love to get into that. Um, so I think hopefully we can have another podcast in 2 years, and I'm
Of
gonna
course.
have exploded, and I'll be everywhere. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, no, and I don't want to put a limit on what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing at the moment. We get to work on real massive architectural projects all over the world. Every week you come in, you're in a different part of the world. You have to research it, develop it. Some of the biggest brands, some of the biggest clients. Though I think the one project I can talk about is Man United. We got to work on the Manchester United Stadium. That's a
Nice.
big example of like, this is a huge real project worth billions and billions that I helped had a small part in, but that feels amazing. Um,
Nice.
so let's see. I love film. I would love to do some in the future. But let's see.
So, what is the kind of work that you're doing now? Like, 'cause you're still predominantly in the architectural space. What are the differences like in terms of your role or your approach now, approaching it from a concept artist and design point of view versus what it was before 2020?
Oh yeah. Well, I guess the reality of architecture is it's probably about 10% design. Um, Maybe that's not fair. Every step is design, but what me and you would call real design is probably 10%. And then there's
Mm,
the
mm.
reality of the meetings and making sure things are legal, making sure everyone's happy, the costing, all these things that kind of really, we always say if you want to build like a 4-story house in architecture, you need to pitch a 5-story house because
Okay.
it's going to go down over time. So a lot of what we do, which I think is the same, the blue sky thinking, it's the big idea at the start of a project. It's the spark, the magic at the beginning. Um, and what we get to do at work at the moment is kind of the big spark, the big idea, the storytelling, the big concept, whatever it may be. Um, and I think what I was doing before in 2020 was more the nitty gritty. And it might be the big idea, but then it's the level of creativity really starts to get knocked down. And you could spend 4 years on a project. Some of my friends are on projects they've been on for 4 years.
Mm,
Um, what we do at my company and what I've done in any form of freelancing is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, big idea. Here's an idea, and you might revisit it over different parts of the project, but it's constantly exciting and big picture. Yeah.
So you mentioned like you did a mixture of huge projects, huge budgets. I'm sure like huge timescales as well, versus something that's more indie, something more intimate, something more that's probably more. We got to get this out ASAP. Do you find either one more difficult than the other, or do you find you tap into different skills with either one?
I tend to bounce. I bounce between doing like the space elevator projects that I've done. We'll talk about later, I'm sure. That was a huge project, went on for a very long time, lots of different iterations. But then between that, I will come back and do a very quick, silly, magical floating thing with no sense. I think it's good to bounce between the two. I actually listened to your podcast a few weeks ago with Cole Price, and he was saying how much he dislikes the long projects and he likes to do it really quick. And I completely agree and see the value in that. But I also like that they're really getting into the nitty gritty of the design. So I still, in my professional and my personal, I bounce between. Sometimes I really want to design a cabinet and design a chair and design all these aspects. And other times I want to just do spaceship. Yeah.
One thing I've observed, and so far, not one of these, I guess we can call them species of creatives, has proved otherwise, is people who started off in architecture or as architects are trained and then became concept artists. They all make excellent designers. Like you guys have this kind of like this specific way of, or I don't know, specific, you can just tell if it was an accent or like a language, you could tell their dialect, if that makes sense, of like designing an approach. And it is the sense that you have, and I'm sure it's from the architectural training, how you guys have to understand space and all that kind of good stuff. And then applying the almost blue sky things that concept art can offer as well. Yeah, there's a specific kind of like panache that you guys have with approaching stuff. And you seem to like definitely match up in terms of that approach yet. So there's something about architects who become concept artists that leads to good concept art, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think Nick Staff I've been following for a while.
Yeah.
Not met him yet, but I'm a huge fan of his work. I've actually just been doing his course. I don't know if you've done his course yet, but it's really good. It's been a nice refresher for a few things, but just it is a slightly different approach. You can't help it. I think once you've spent 10 years kind of in that world, you will inevitably get a little bit excited about problem solving a little bit more than maybe the average artist. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's details. I work with a lot of artists who don't have an architectural background, and sometimes they just do not want to get into the nitty gritty. And they can be incredible artists and storytellers. But sometimes it is important to get into the nitty gritty, I think, in specific kinds of concept art that I'm interested in, not in concept art. But yeah, there's a time and a place for it, and it's trying to figure out when it is. Like, I'm someone, my layers are always really organized and my brushes are really, and I've been trying to break out of that because it is limiting. Whereas I think most artists are the opposite. So it's, while some artists are moving right, I'm kind of moving left. And part of my development's actually been breaking out of that architectural kind of mindset. It will always be there. I will never lose it. I can't lose it even if I wanted to. But trying to shift out of it a little bit, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, for sure. But even though, like, because I guess that's where your grounding is as a designer and a creative and as a professional. Like you said, even if you try, that's pretty much where it was all, you know, the fusion reaction happened, right? Like, and that's where it's constantly going to gravitate towards, and you're just tapping into it when you need to, or almost letting it shape how you approach things. Obviously, it's working to your advantage. And I think on an overall project, when there aren't characters like that, as you just kind of highlighted, like it's an advantage. we both definitely love football, and sometimes you got to have play, sit back and protect the defense. Sometimes you got to just go roaming, and there's a nice kind of like a time and a place and timing required as well. Do you find you do that deliberately, or in the sense of like when a project requires it, you kind of know what role to assume, if that makes sense?
I think at this stage I know what role. It took a while, without doubt. We all get burnout at times, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
one or two times I've got burnout is when I've gone from project to project to project to project, and I've tried to make every one magic and amazing and full of design, when sometimes they don't even want it. Sometimes it is just about story or a mood or a lighting, or sometimes they prefer it to be a bit messy.
Yeah.
And that's something I've had to learn, definitely. But I have now. I feel confident now I can pick and choose.
Sick. I also want to touch upon communication. It's super important not only to be able to communicate, but also to be able to understand communication and understand instruction, or even the stuff that's literally spoken to you or unspoken as well. It's not surprising with my experience in life now and people that I've spoken to on my own as well. But initially, when you said that you did have difficulty communicating, you were shy. When we spoke in London, like that's not something you'd pick up straight away. You came across as a very good communicator, and you do so far in this episode. So, what was taking you back there? What was that like? Like, have you thought much about that? Have you dwelt upon that? And how was it? How was it for you? Kind of like breaking out from that shyness, and was it even something about breaking out, or did you have to add stuff to almost your arsenal, pun intended, to become a good communicator?
Oh, on top of this.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think when when you get older, you tend to realize everything is a little bit of what are your insecurities. And I was always very sporty. And even as a child, throughout my teenage years, there was no confidence issue playing cricket, playing
Mm.
football. I would be the one screaming and shouting, and I would be adrenaline fueled, absolutely loving it. But then you put me in a classroom and ask me to read a passage, I'm going to fall apart. Or I did as a child, because it was my worst nightmare, and because I was dyslexic, and because it was something I wasn't passionate about.
Mm.
So I think one of those key things to think about is, what are you passionate about? And that's really why I followed this career, because it's what I'm passionate about.
Mm.
So when I was a young child reading words that I didn't really recognize in a book about something I didn't care about, it wasn't great. But then when I went to architecture school, suddenly you have to present. It's a key part of it. You do your project, and you used to print it out on the walls. You'd waste so much money in printing, um, and you'd pin it all up, and you'd have half an hour while everyone sits and listens to you pouring your heart out. Um, and what I realized is, because it was my baby, because I knew more about what I was talking about than anyone sat down, I could do it, and it wasn't a problem anymore. As soon as I kind of flipped that switch, and it was, this is
Mm.
what I'm passionate about, I could do it. Um, and then in terms of like the networking thing as well, even like going out at university, year one didn't go out, didn't speak to anyone. Year two, a little more. More and more confident. But what you realize is, like, there's nice people, and I've been really happy to find out that the bubble of concept art, it's such a nice one. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely was very concerned how competitive it would be, and it is competitive, but it's
Yeah.
not nasty. And what is it incredible, from meeting people like yourself and Cole and all these, Pablo, everyone's so giving. Everybody's got a tutorial, everyone's got a skill, everyone's got a contact, everybody's, um, it feels like people are rooting for each other, even maybe they shouldn't. It's such a competitive industry, but everyone's just trying to lift each other up. Um, so I don't feel nervous at all speaking at a concept art event or in a one-on-one networking event, because everybody I've met so far has been really nice. I think if I had a few bad experiences and a few
Mm.
people were like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" If we get loads of terrible comments on this video, I might cry. But at the
Yeah.
moment, I think everyone I've met, including yourself, just seemed so nice and welcoming.
I can definitely concur with that as well. That's something that I've fully experienced. I've had many different lives and not art related, and I've been in very professional and even non-professional, like hostile environments with people, like very obnoxious people, good people, but there's a lot of definitely not like how you just explained concept art is. And yeah, like when you're kind of used to that, you just assume that's how it is everywhere. Then when I entered the concept art space, I think it was a couple of years before yourself. I entered the industry when I was fast approaching my 30s, and officially entered it, if I can put a time on it, when I hit just after I hit 30. So I can relate to it, and like, I'd love to chat about that soon as well, like the milestones with age and stuff. But yeah, I just anticipated, like exactly like you said, like I never put it in words, but I did assume that too. Like, it's going to be super competitive because art is like, it's about improvement, 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 improvement. But to this day, and yeah, there have been negative interactions, but they're very specific and not related to the community overall. I can literally count on one hand and have many fingers left in that situation. Like, it is this very, I would say, healthy space when people do get a chance to interact. Although if there is a criticism, is that even though online there's a lot of people that interact, it's still very introverted. And it'd be cool, like with events like Concept 101 and other stuff, like if it was possible to meet up more on a regular basis in person, it would take it to another level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been trying to go to some more of the Concept 101 meetups and stuff like that, trying
Yeah.
to reach out. But yeah, I completely agree with everything you said.
Have you gone to many other events outside of 101, like around the world and stuff? Because there's a few that happen.
Yeah, again, so lucky that we've been able to go to some of these events with the company. Been to Nonstop Barcelona
Oh,
3 years
cool.
in a row.
Nice.
I think it's the best one. I love it. I've been to one or two others as well, but they feel quite um, vast. There's so many people, and it's so many people trying to say hello to people that they've like. It's quite that is feels quite competitive at times. Some of those events
Mm.
actually. But Barcelona, if you ever consider going to Nonstop Barcelona, it's a very relaxed feel. It's definitely not overpopulated, and you can just go and really get to know these people like Pablo Dominguez,
Yeah.
who goes every year. So yeah, that's my favorite event so far. Nonstop
Sick.
Barcelona.
Just going back a bit to the communication stuff we was talking about, what advice would you give to somebody who is in that place right now that you were when you just started uni or in that first year? And maybe they are struggling with communication, or they don't realize that, like you said, that switch hasn't been flicked on yet. What would you advise them?
It depends how what you. So I got really nervous about presenting and reading, and what I started to just think about was a conversation. It's just talking. Um, Everybody's nervous. Everybody gets used to nervous, and it just comes with experience. I think I've done so much presenting and talking and lectures and stuff like that now that it doesn't feel like that big a deal to me.
Yeah.
But if I'd never done it, even if it was the same person, my heart would be going a little bit quicker. So I think just getting out there, saying hello to people, going to Concept 101 and not an events like that, the meetups, and don't just speak to the same two people. Like, you say hello to people, and it's not aggressive networking. I don't think,
Uh
like,
huh.
you're not using people, but everybody got a story, and go and try and listen to everyone's story, and just like
Yes.
the event where we met. I think I just wandered over and was like, "Hello, nice to meet
Yep.
you."
Yep.
Out of the blue, and that can be intimidating. And I think sometimes you've just got to say hello and see how
Yeah.
people are.
Yeah. No, fully. When I'm in my zone or my pocket or where it's my space kind of thing, you can't shut me up. But if it's somewhere new or I've never been there before, you can't get me to speak. And I remember when I went to my first event, art event, and I was just like, I have no business approaching that person there, even though I really want to. So and then it was literally like some dude in my brain just literally just get the hell over there and just do it. It was awkward as hell, but I'm so glad I did, because now when I go to these events, I can't shut up. So it's a good thing. Um, Power Rangers.
Yes.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Which one was your Power Ranger and which one are you now?
I was definitely the Gold Ranger. I had the staff and the little gold, like
Yeah.
Team Tommy. I don't know, Tommy. He was a few Power Rangers. He was a red, then a
White
gold,
Power
then a red.
Ranger or
He was white. Yeah,
yeah, he had gold trims, I think.
yeah.
He was green, then he went white, I think, if my law is correct.
Whatever Tommy was. Tommy was green. He was
Tommy.
white. He was red. He was gold. I was Team
Yeah.
Tommy. With a little side crush on Kimberly. I don't know if you remember
Of course,
Kimberly, the
of course,
Pink Ranger.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And which one are you now? Has it changed or are you still Tommy?
I think I'm still Tommy. I think
Sick.
I am. Yeah. I want to be
Sick.
Tommy. I grew my hair. I am the man bun at one
Oh,
point.
wicked.
By the Karate Kid. Yeah. Yeah, I think just genuinely speaking about Power Rangers for a moment, because I think the blue one is more techie
Yep.
and like technical.
Yep.
Um,
He's more
I'm
back
more
office.
I'm more the leader.
Yeah.
I feel like a leader with some things. So yeah, Tommy.
Sick.
What about yourself? What about yourself?
I thought I was the red one. Growing up, I wanted to be the red one. But if I think about it, I'm definitely more of a Blue Ranger now. Over time, I've realized, oh, I'm Billy. So rather than, as long as I got a Zord, I'm down. But yeah, it's all good. So before, no, let's get into spaceships. So we have a few of our segments coming up, but let's geek about spaceships a little bit. You mentioned Star Wars.
Yeah.
And not only just spaceships, but I guess sci-fi or whatever adjacent anyway, because not only just the fictional side of things, which I guess a lot of us in the entertainment industry tend to speak about a lot as well. There's also the real world stuff, which is I've only appreciated more as I've gotten older of how awesome that stuff is, because I get it more now, as opposed to, you know, things just looking like triangles and squares versus these exotic forms you get in fiction. But what's your kind of like sci-fi / spaceship journey been like over the years?
I've got to be honest, I just love space. I love
Yeah.
all versions of space. My favorite film of all time is Interstellar. I think it's a masterpiece, and The Martian. So they're both quite hard science fiction kind of deals with quite realistic spaceships. But also complete sucker for Foundation, Free Body Problem, those kind of shows, which dare to dream a little bit and be a little bit silly, but I really don't have a preference. Honestly, anything that's in space, I'm just so excited about the idea of going to space, what it could be, as long as it's utopian. And I know that's quite negative, like quite different than most concept artists, but I've really had to force myself not to just be completely utopian, but I tend to be attracted to things that are hopeful and positive and beautiful. Yeah. Did you watch Foundation at all? Have you seen Foundation?
I remember reading the book many, many years ago. I've only started a few episodes of the series so far. But yeah, Isaac Asimov, obviously like proper sci-fi versus the more, I guess, the fantasy side of things as well. But yeah, have you found the show so far? I think it's 3 seasons in now, or 2?
I love it. I know some people don't. I think it's so good, and you can feel the money. I'm not the biggest Apple fan, but they know how to make a TV show, and there's something about their shows just has an extra level of quality. For All Mankind as well. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's
no,
Apple
not
TV.
not yet. No,
Amazing show, and that's really serious and very different. The whole premise is basically the Russians landed on the moon first, so it kind of takes an alternative look at history. But yeah, any kind of science and space, I'm all over.
Sick. Pre-Interstellar, what was the go-to film for you, or what was the one that really like was your favorite?
Star Wars. Probably Star Wars. Very special, like prequels though. I know everybody loves the originals, and now it's popular to shit on anything that's not the originals. But no, I grew up on Jar Jar Binks and Qui-Gon Jinn and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, those early Star Wars films were definitely what made me feel, wow, there's a huge magical world out there that we could get to.
Oh no, I love the prequels. Were they the first ones you watched properly, or did you kind of see
the first film I ever saw in my life so specifically was The Phantom Menace. I remember walking into the cinema and my mum holding my hand, and Jar Jar was incredible.
Sick. Yeah, that was the first Star Wars film. No, I think that was the first major release that I've seen in the cinemas. I think they re-released it a few years, but the prequel, the first trilogy, into the the theatrical re-release, that was cool. But I love I initially loved the prequels. Now, half of Attack of the Clones is cool. Then I'm not really too much of a fan of Revenge of the Sith. Although when I first watched it, and this is just me like having to rank them. Any excuse to watch Star Wars, I'm down. I'm always down.
You don't like Revenge of the Sith?
If I'm ranking the trilogies, Phantom Menace is the one, and it always gets better every time I watch it. Always legendary status always improves every single year. Like it's just got so many cool moments. Revenge of the Sith is of the three at the bottom, in my opinion.
Shameful. Completely disagree. It's the best of three.
Interesting.
I think Attack of the Clones is the middle ground. I agree with what you're saying actually about the Phantom Menace, because there's some magic in the fact they were trying all these new things, and it felt like somehow a lot more practical. And then I think Revenge of the Sith, they started to get a hammer on the CG, but the one in the middle, they were kind of a bit green screen too much, I think.
Interesting. What about like so is it more like the story side or the visual side? Why you would rank?
I've always been a visual person. I of course care about story, and story is beautiful, but it's the visuals and the music. Like again, not a massive music person, but music in cinema just elevates it so much. Interstellar, Star Wars, the Duel of the Fates.
Yes.
You just get tingles when it goes da 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 da.
I mean, that's got to be one of the reasons why. No, that's definitely one of the main reasons why Phantom Menace is so good, Duel of the Fates. But also taking away the obviously the opening battle scene in Revenge of the Sith, which is incredible. Like that's the first thing you see when the film starts. It's got more, in my opinion, more memorable, more cooler stuff. You got Darth Maul, the pod races, the first time you see the Naboo ships, the dual-ended lightsaber, and all that kind of good stuff. Like it's that's if I had to pick of that trilogy. Although when it comes to like things that have parts, I always see that as one whole thing. So I was gonna caveat all these ranking stuff, but yeah, as over time, the more I see it, the more I watch them. Phantom Menace is the star of that particular trilogy.
It's the most iconic. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I do agree with that.
Although sound wise, I must admit, the Attack of the Clones, because of the depth charge mine thing that Obi-Wan throws out, that just takes the cake for me in that one. But particular about sound, I geek about sound too much. I get super excited about it. Do you have a similar relationship? Because you mentioned there about the music and the score of other films as well, and I agree with you. When I first watched Interstellar, and it just hits you with the music straight away, classic Zimmer. When you give him license to roam, that's the kind of awesomeness you're gonna get. But what's that relationship with sound to you? Like, is it the musical side of things? Is it almost like the sound design side of things? Do you even pay attention to the sound? Do you let it kind of like take you for a ride? What's your relationship with it?
Absolutely takes me for a ride. I'm someone that doesn't really listen to music, like actual pop music and stuff. I listen to ASMR and the sound of rain and podcasts like this. Quite a lot, TED Talks and things like that. So then when I go into a theater, I'm 100% locked in visually, and I'm just on a journey with the music, and suddenly the hairs stand up and you get excited. That it's not cinema without the music. If you watch even the greatest scene on mute, it's not the same. But if you hear it probably is. But I'm not intellectually advanced enough to know much about music in terms of
specifically.
So no, I try not to analyze music. I just let it flow, and my body reacts to it.
Have you seen Gravity?
Yeah.
Did you watch that in theaters?
I did. It did not stick with me as much as the other ones we've mentioned. I know a lot of people loved it. I don't know why. It just, for me, like, even as we're talking about it, I see Sandra Bullock floating, and that's about it.
So
I'm
the reason,
presuming this is one of your favorites.
no, it's not my favorite, but I did enjoy that experience. But when I've watched it on TV since, it hasn't got that same pull. It was an IMAX, you had the 3D thing. It's great in 3D because obviously all the debris and all that kind of good stuff. But specifically, why I really enjoyed it, it was the score. The score was like perfect for that film. It just matched the whole action and literally like, spoiler alert if anyone hasn't watched it, from being in space to the moment it land back on Earth. It's just one of those where like, when I think of like sound in a film, obviously space stuff, it's one of those where it's a good marriage in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. Maybe I need to rewatch it. I think I've watched it once. I think it
Yeah.
just didn't quite hit me, but I'd be keen to rewatch it, actually.
Sick. So speaking of journeys, let's get to our first segment.
Nice
The
segment.
cryopod
That was
segment.
good.
So the rules are fluid. You can make the setting how you need to be, but most of the life support stuff is taken care of. But you're going to be sent off in a cryopod for however many light years it needs to be. What 3 things do you need or would like to take with you on that journey?
Okay. So I'm going to start with a disclaimer, because
Please.
of course the answer is my partner Nico and my dog
Yeah.
Boo, obviously.
Okay.
But I'm going to presume this isn't an option. We're just, for the sake of the argument, it's just me and things, okay? So she won't kill me when she listens to this. So I would say the first thing is, I like to be productive, and I'm someone who was always like, come on, what can I do? Am I doing so? Don't feel good if I'm not doing something. And if you're telling me I can spend multiple years sleeping, then I want something to record my dreams. I think a lot of people
Sick.
dream and have really vivid dreams. I occasionally do, and when I do, they often lead to a really big idea or a bit of concept or something like that. So I would love the idea of like some kind of recording element, recording device, dream catcher, whatever you want to call it, that I can watch back when I wake up. I've got 3 years worth of big ideas. I would love that.
Sick.
So that's number one. Which I think is proven in Prometheus, because I rewatched Prometheus and recently, and David is watching Elizabeth
Yes.
Shaw dream. So I'm sure you can dream. This counts. Okay, so that's number one.
Yeah.
Let me check my list. So number 2, of course, blender. Need a blender.
Nice.
That's my
nice.
weapon of choice. So I've got a blender machine, whatever that might be. That might be a really advanced computer or whatever, but give me blender. That's the weapon of choice, so that I can take on my dreams and kind of make them into beautiful concept art. I think that's important for me.
Excellent.
And then number 3, which arguably the most important, and I've really put a lot of time into this, is a hammer.
Okay.
And I need a hammer because I watched Alien Covenant. And I know I've seen this too many times. People go to sleep on these pods. They're going to this distant planet. I would say 50% of the time, there's aliens. There's aliens,
Yeah.
and they're going to kill you. That seems to be so common. That's what history tells us. So I need something to both fight the aliens and get myself out of the pod if the pod fails, because that's another fear.
Okay.
If the pod isn't opening and I'm just stuck, and I've got blender and a dream catcher, I'm in trouble. So I'm going to have some kind of hammer to fight off the aliens and open up the pod.
Excellent.
Spice.
That's definitely got to be the freshest 3 you've had so far. That's a brilliant. I like the dream element. Have you seen Raised by Wolves? Have you watched that show?
Loved it.
Oh,
Yeah. Got cancelled.
so it
Disgrace.
Yeah, oh, same. Like, I loved the one thing I really liked about that is the dream, or how they handle space travel, where almost like you live in that kind of like weird dream state, or you can explore this like kind of open world thing whilst in a dream kind of thing. Very creepy, obviously, with that show. But specifically about dreams, and like I mentioned, vivid dreaming. I have vivid dreams. Do you have vivid dreams? Is that something from experience?
When it happens, yes, it's not often, but like once every few months. But when it happens, I remember it so clearly.
Oh wow.
But then it fades away. So I always rush to write something down or try and draw it.
Yeah. Sick. Interesting. And do you find like those that you write down, is it like anything or just specifically stuff that's related to ideas?
anything, and anything that's exciting to me. If it's just I dreamt about walking my dog, that's magical, and I wake up with a big smile, but it's not something I feel like I need to. But if
Yeah.
it's I've dreamt I'm on a spaceship, or I've dreamt I'm walking on the moon, or whatever, it's like, oh, what was I thinking there?
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah.
Are you able to share any of your dreams that you've had, like the ones that you kind of either wrote down, or because sometimes they
So
kind of
I,
scar you, right?
yeah, I mean, the horror, obviously the horror, you wake up and you're at school naked. We all have that one. Um, my teeth are falling out. I've had that a few times.
Oh
They're
wow.
horrifying. Um, but I've definitely done a few spaceships and a few underwater stuff. Just quite often I tend to be underwater. I don't know why,
Yeah. I've
but
had a few of
in
those.
beautiful underwater like facilities.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe I watch them like too often, but
yeah.
that kind of idea.
Sick. Cool. So that wraps up the Crypod segment. So we have Blender, which I think is a great one. We have, I guess, a dream catcher of some kind, which is a great project to design in itself. That's a great brief. And a hammer. Excellent picks. So the next segment is breakdown. So do you have a project you could break down for us and your process behind it?
Yes, of course.
Let's go.
So I did consider showing my Greenwich project. Um,
Okay.
Somewhere that I was really excited to show because I think it's a personal project that's all linked back to essentially the the dropship question.
Uh-huh.
I think this is one of the few projects that link closer to an IP that some of them that I could
Uh-huh.
imagine this in a Doctor Strange or an Inception or something.
Makes sense. Yep.
It's simple idea of just taking a design element, a strip. So have you been to Greenwich?
No, but I will now after you mentioned it, so it's definitely gonna be on my list.
So Greenwich is a magical place and it's got a very steep hill that goes down towards a dome and a naval college and then looks out to the Thames. And it's beautiful. And I kind of took that idea for this project. Um,
Sick.
and this bit here, this section is is essentially Greenwich. Uh,
Ah,
so they have a little steep park that looks down, and then you have the Naval College and then a big building here. So I kind of took that idea on this one and really played with that simple idea and turned it into a clock because Greenwich is Greenwich Mean Time. It's a clock,
nice.
rotated it. And this is one of the few projects that I look back and I'm like, yeah, I think I did well on that one. And I got to do some really cool design work without getting nitty gritty.
Yep.
So I think this would be good in if they did some kind of Doctor Strange in Greenwich. I think this is what
Ah,
my proposal would be.
nice.
Um, but you can see a little bit here of the way I work and the way I kind of am constantly referencing. I'm constantly looking at precedents. I'm constantly doing little doodles. Um, and that kind of culminates in the project I really want to show, which is my Space Elevate project, which
Cool.
is one we've discussed. Um, it's a project that honestly has spanned a few years. I hope Cole Price doesn't watch this because he hate that it didn't take a day. Um, but it wasn't constant work. I had a full-time job, and it spawned from two things, and it's definitely not 2 years of work. It's infinitely less, but it's a project I constantly keep coming back to.
Okay.
I think I'm done now. Thankfully, I think I'm done. I'm moving on to other things, but it's something that I got really excited about. Um, And why I got really excited is because although it's a space elevator project, there's so much to do with a space elevator. When you really get into it and you look at a bit of the science and science fiction behind it all, there's a lot there. You can't just
Yeah.
have an elevator. The one in Foundation, actually, which is amazing and I really like, it's essentially a very tall skyscraper which collapse.
Uh-huh.
And of course it collapsed because that's not the reality of anything we could ever achieve. It would be too massive. It would be stationary. You'd have to deal with incredible amounts of gravity and weather. Um, and I did a huge amount of research in this project, which started around this diagram. This is not my diagram. This is a diagram by a NASA scientist. It's incredibly blurry, and that's how I found it. Um, and what essentially it is, it's six elevators around the center of Spire that goes up into space. And NASA have done a lot of work into this, and a lot of really much more intelligent people than me have done a lot of the good groundwork on the science. But I kind of felt there was a gap in the visual. A lot of these people were incredible at being able to write what they wanted, but not showing it. So
Mhm.
I kind of took this as the basis of my project, which immediately was hard science because there's complete physics involved in it. And the number one thing you find out is it actually needs to be able to move. If you do a space elevator on planet Earth, it has to be located at the equator, and it has to be able to move along the equator to avoid bad weather, essentially.
Mm.
Which means it kind of needs to, by default, be um, a boat. It needs to start on some kind of Earthport boat that is able to move. And yeah, it was done for me as a big piece of concept art, but it was also done for competition. Architecture is much better at concept art at doing quick competitions and exciting big international competitions. And a lot of them are very architectural, but not very visual. So this is
Mm.
where there's a little bit of a gap. So I took the beginnings of my projects, which if you Google my name, unfortunately, it's the very earliest screenshots done at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday night between all kinds of different professional work and life stuff. But it was backed up by a lot of science and a lot of critical thinking. Um, and I entered it to the competition. And what was really bizarre to me was I won the competition, which was amazing. I was really excited about it. But what followed was really interesting. It started to get picked up by first the local newspaper. My mum contacted my local newspaper back home, told them
Nice.
about it, and it went in the local news. Thank you, Mum. And then from there, it went to the regional news, and then it went to the BBC Northwest. Then it went to the BBC. Suddenly, people from the Sun and the Daily Mail were calling me. I had an interview in Dubai, and suddenly it became a project that started to really get people talking in terms of, are we actually presenting this as a real concept? And suddenly
Mm.
I got added to a very official science space elevator discussion board and forums, got asked to present at these things. And
Sick.
the people that I was referencing and working were the people actually in these committees. So it's really interesting. And it's a
Wow.
good example of sometimes when you do a bit of good marketing, people can actually take it quite seriously. Um, Probably too seriously in some aspects, but it was really amazing. Um, so I just want to push. It's not just a visual thing for me in this project. The big thing that kept me coming back to it, it was the community, it was the notoriety, but it was also the science and the critical thinking of how it would all work. Um, and yeah, what it essentially comes down to is um, you need a spaceport down on Earth, you need a tether that goes up into space, and then you need some kind of counterweight. This would be most likely be a captured asteroid or a satellite or something else. And it's not a process of building a skyscraper up. Think of it much more of you're actually tethering down a very thin cable that would have to be incredibly strong, but the science is there. It seems to make sense. So with that backing, I suddenly felt like I was able to jump into the project. Starting with spaceport. So I'm going to flick for a few stuff, but the main one we'll talk about is the spaceport. I had a lot of fun with this one. And this is kind of how it ended up. This is a bit of the design work. And I do sketch, and I sketch on pen and paper. I also do these very rudimentary sketches in Photoshop and Procreate. Um, but I also use Blender to sketch, and for me, it is absolutely sketching. I know some people would not say it's sketching because it's 3D modeling, but the way I would
Hmm.
do these kind of very quick form studies, it might take me 30 seconds, 5 minutes in Blender to do it. And I can do 100 of these, 20 of these, 10 of these, whatever I feel I need to do very quickly. So this is an example where, although I actually really liked this one, I probably ended up liking this one more as a diagram. I ended up picking this one. And the reason I ended up picking this one was because of all the opportunity to put other elements, whereas this felt very much like here is a massive solar panel. Um,
Mm.
so that's kind of how I ended up picking this as my form for the project. But again, doing these studies is really great because I could go back and I could reuse this for a different project or something completely different. And I'm not ashamed of reusing my own work on different projects over time. This is just to prove it's not AI, and prove that the 3D modeling that I did is very simple, very just form. Um,
Cool.
and then once I develop it, I actually do push the blender quite hard. Some projects are completely Photoshop for me, but a lot of them use quite a bit of Blender. This one used quite a lot of Blender because I was really getting into the nitty gritty, and I had the time to do
Mm.
it. The first iterations of this were very simple, but over time I was able to push it and try and push the scale and break down some of those key forms. This is where the render got to, so this is the kind of Blender output and the level that I got it to. And then this is the Photoshop at the end. So a lot of the Photoshop
Nice.
for me is just adding that moodiness, adding that motion, and also losing elements. I think sometimes architects, especially in visualization, we show detail everywhere. If you see
Yeah.
an architectural visualization, it's amazing. The art is incredible. The design is incredible, but it's got noise absolutely everywhere. And the one thing I've really had to learn is to lose some of the details and smudge things and like what is the focus. And that's what I tend to do in Photoshop. So that's that one. And the beauty, anyone that knows Blender will know, once you've made something in Blender, you're not making it and putting the effort in for a single shot. If I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
spend multiple hours, several hours really developing it, it allows me to then go in and do a series of plans, sections, elevations, but also more moody things. I can do different lightings. This was, for example, an elevation I did right at the last minute. It took me 5 minutes. Just rotate the camera band, black and white, smudge it. And because I'd put all the work and design, critical thinking into this one, this became a very simple exercise in just essentially taking a screenshot and playing some quick filters. That's it again. And I do like this one. This is another one where you really get the sense of the verticality, I think.
Mm.
This is a project that links upwards, and I saw it as not a project I could show in a single image. It's too
Mm.
vast. It doesn't really make sense. So I wanted to show the different stages of the project. This is the climbers, the elevators ascending upwards. And yeah, even in blindness, just being able to the little depths of field and stuff like that, it really helps. This is the focus. This is the background, but it feels designed, I think, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to
Cool.
shy away from this stuff. I do more developed sketching now. Definitely got better sketching, but I'm not ashamed to say my ideas 100% start with shape making, sketching. There's
Excellent.
nobody gets to see this. This is for me. This is just
Yeah.
what am I trying to achieve? What are different options? What are the different compositions I can start thinking about? I'm always thinking about what I need. Programming. Architecture is a lot of programming. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is where the toilet's going to go, where's the server room going to go, what is you know, what is powering it? Is it solar powered? Is there a fusion generator? I'm always thinking in the back of my head these kind of um, things. And then, yeah, again, taking in the models, I do little call outs. I start to think about what it is. Always try to have a little bit of scale in anything that I do. Architects are terrible at that. If you ask an architect to do a building, they'll just do a building. There won't be anyone in there at the beginning. That's why you need the artist to come in and really help tell the scale. And never forgetting how it works. I'm not an engineer. I don't have all the answers, but I have the beginnings of the answer, which I think is what concept art is all
Mm.
about. I think it's not just magic and fairies. I think it could be this, suggesting it, making it plausible. And then the reality is in real life and in the film, there would be other people coming in and really advancing this further. I don't want to push it too far, but I'm always thinking, how does the cable work? How does the motor
Mm-hmm.
work? Where are the people going to stand? Is all this usable space, or is some of this a void? Is it a luxurious space? Because a lot of space architecture that exists at the moment is not luxurious. It is
Mm.
efficient. And that is
Mm.
amazing, and we need that. But long term, and in shows like Foundation, it is high end luxury. And the reality
Yes.
is, the way we get to these kind of projects is by quite wealthy individuals paying for them. And for that to happen, it needs to be luxurious, it needs to be exciting, it needs to be space tourism, not just um, science, purely science, because in that case, it wouldn't be as exciting. Again, so this is just an example where I've just took my 3D model, the one on the left, and just started to play a bit more with the scale.
Mm.
I know you and Cole spoke in your podcast about cropping things and not showing the whole. I've tried to do that a little bit more, and this is
Mm.
one of the images where you just kind of hopefully get a little sense of the scale of the thing. This is the ship, and the ship continues outwards. Again, always doing the Nick. I call it the Nick stuff. I'm sure you all call it the Nick
Yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah.
it's actually really common architecture. It's an
Mm-hmm.
architectural call out, and always just noting what we've been working on and how it goes. And yeah, reusing the models. I made the model of the space elevator. I made one for a passenger, which is a little different. And then I made,
Nice.
sorry, this one's for the passenger. This one's for the cargo.
Yeah.
Um, But then because I've done that model, I've invested that time, I've invested that design work, I'm going to get 5, 6 images out if I can. And again, just to show the process, it's quite Blender heavy, but I don't push it. I don't get all the details in there. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
the mood and the lighting does eventually come in the Photoshop. Um, So I guess that's kind of the base render, and then that's the Photoshop. So that's how I try and enhance it, try and lose some of those details.
Yes.
What is the focus? What is the sense of motion? And then, yeah, the climb is continuing upwards. Again, I'm reusing these elements. I'm not wasting them, but I'm using them to connect the story, because we've now seen these elements right at the base in the oceans on Earth, and you now get to see them approaching what is the space station above. You can't have a space elevator and not have an exciting space
Mm-hmm.
station at the top. So I continued the design language and some of the color palettes, which essentially is the hexagon, the kind of continues, but it's also the color scheme. And I don't
Mm.
want it to be a perfect match. I want it to feel like it's a slightly different thing. But that visual connectivity really hopefully shows that it's part of the same project. And I had a lot of fun with this, and a lot of the space station stuff I do. I don't know if you're the same. It's quite simple shapes for me, and it's repetitive, because architecture
Mm.
is repetitive. If you go and look at a Colosseum, you go and look at anything, it's the
Yes.
same shape, rotated over and over, kind of a circular array. Same with these, kind of make it one to array it, but there's logic there. The idea is the circular elements create gravity by rotating. So this allows for parts of the space elevator to be have gravity. So you can do your normal things. You can have a swimming pool, for example.
Nice.
Whereas the larger elements in the back, I'm envisioning more like a zero-G warehouse. This is where the industry happens. This is where the science happens. So
Sick.
luxury, science.
Love it.
Again, another view, same model, just to try and get that a different perspective. Looking back now, this might be a little bit too noisy and maybe could have had a little more detail. Um, just I think if I went back, I would have a few more glowing windows and a few more details. Potentially
Mm-hmm.
some of this stuff gets a little noisy. Um, but I think it sells the idea, and I think you get the point of it all. The tethers appear extending off towards the comet or captured asteroid that would be the counterweight. So that's way
Oh,
off in the
nice.
distance.
Sick.
Again, architecture, what is it? Never forgetting anything I do, I always try to do a very simple diagram, the most simple, basic I can. it's always good if you're showing any kind of visual to have a camera or map and really explain what you're looking at. So this was the ocean. This is our space elevator. Space station, sorry. These are the little climbers. And then right off in the distance, somewhere you've got the comet and the asteroid. And just to wrap up, I'm going to show a few quick spaces that I did. So
Oh, nice.
this is the swimming pool. So I'm envisaging this in the central circular one. So in the rotating, you would get gravity for your centrifugal force. So it's a big rotating gravity, but it essentially means you stick to the base. But that doesn't mean it needs to be built boring. I think a lot of space exploration, a lot of the idea of it is, let's not just build Earth in space. Can we have a bit more fun with it? And I'd like to, anytime I do something, I want you to know this, you're not just on planet Earth, essentially. So I had a lot of fun with this one. And again, it's similar approach. Here's a hexagon, rotated, arrayed. And that is the Colosseum. If you look at the great architectural designs in the world, a lot of it is repetition. You make your key aspects, your key asset, and you reuse them as much as you can. And then around that, you might have a feature which stands out. And to do that, you would make the other surrounding elements a lot more natural. Again, a little more of the explanation. And despite saying that, I guess I want you to know you're not on Earth, I wanted to do a quick, quite luxurious bathroom. And the reason I did this is because I was trying to sell the idea of the project being not something where you're crammed in a spaceship. It's high-end space tourism, which is what is going to fund the real exploration and the science and the industry. And to do that, if the place has a nice bathroom, it's a nice place. That's a key thing in life.
Okay, nice.
And there she is. And again, a lot of this is Blender. So these were an example where I've not spent as long on this. This is just a quick screenshot of the Blender. I don't think I even really rendered this. Just really enhancing the sense of mood and light and what is the focus, that idea of luxury. You're a passenger, you're looking at the stars, you've got the moon ahead of you, and you're being served a cocktail on your journey upwards. And then never forgetting the 0G. I think this is really fun stuff. This is what if I had an hour in my project, I would 100% be in this place floating about.
Definitely.
And again, as you're going to see, it's a lot of repetition. It's taking a slightly different approach in the hexagons, kind of rotating it. And the reason for this is people are going to bang their heads. There's an element of safety. And I know it's boring to talk about, but in a 0G kind of environment, you want the walls to be cushioned. You want everything to be a little bit safer. So all the elements in here are a little more curved, a little more natural. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with this project. It's been something I keep going back to. I think I'm done with it now, thankfully. But hopefully it gives you an insight into the way I work. Not every project's like this. Some are much quicker. Some I call price. I've done a project in a day. I have. But I do also love the nitty gritty, and I love building a little bit of a narrative and I guess an IP in my own head.
Excellent.
And that's it.
That is epic. I have a few questions, just more like geeking out about the particular project. First of all, I love how thorough it is, and literally like from the ground up, pun intended. It's very well thought out. But thinking of it like from a narrative perspective or like a fictional perspective, what is the weakest link on that particular thing, if there is one?
In terms of its feasibility?
Maybe, or even like, I don't know. Let's say there's a rival faction and they want to take it out. Like where would they attack it? Perhaps if you want to look at it that particular way,
I see.
Or just like even like maybe a design point. Like maybe a better question is like, what was the most difficult thing to figure out for this?
So I was really lucky, and like a lot of this has been figured out. The science is there, the physics works, and I know it seems wildly ambitious, but the physics is real. And the panel that actually were part of the jury for the competition involved former astronauts, some French
Yeah.
astronauts, and some physicists and engineers. So the science worked. So I felt I had the safety net of the science. The one thing that stopped us, so we could build this today. The one thing that would stop us building it is the tether, because the
Right.
tether needs to be a certain way. And it's carbon nanotubes, which do exist, and we've started creating it. So it's all real, but we've made it in such small quantities at the moment that it's not feasible right now. Give it 50 years, 100 years. I don't really know with AI and everything, how it's all going. Maybe it's quicker. But in terms of the feasibility of the project, it's all feasible. The tether is the problem, but they do think they've got a solution. In terms of how I would destroy it, this is a video game, you're destroying it. Again, the tether is always the problem. That is
Okay.
the bit that you need to get as small and as delicate as you can make it, the smaller the target. If it's a skyscraper like in Foundation, it just topples down. If it's
Mm.
a series of delicate cables, I think it's way more secure. And the fact that the project can move is really important, because stationary space elevators do not work because of the web. Number one, it has to be on the equator for the gravity, otherwise the
Yeah.
gravity would not work. And number two, if there's an earthquake, a tsunami, a tidal wave, whatever it is, you're kind of done for. Whereas the idea of it being on an earth port means you're constantly being monitoring the weather and maneuvering in response to that. So I guess if you hit the top, although it would fall down, the damage would actually be quite minimal, because you could cut the cable. The
Mm-hmm.
space bit would stay in space, the earth bit would stay
Mm.
at the base. Um, I think if you destroyed it from the down up, there might be slightly more problems, but nobody's going to destroy it because it's amazing and it's
So,
luxurious and
yeah,
there's a
of
swimming
course.
door.
That
How would you
it's
attack it?
a
What are you seeing?
oh no, it probably I would not want to attack it at all. I just like the idea of obviously actually no. From a narrative perspective, of course, like you said, like you got the space part and the ground part. And it depends why you're attacking it, for example. So whether it's to like do damage to your rivals or maybe a heist even, like there's so much scope there from a narrative perspective. Like it's a great kind of like focal point for action or a set or even a narrative, for example. Like, you know, even just a conversation, Breaking Bad style, because a lot of static great things happen in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, for example. Just a conversation from the bottom to space inside an elevator, I'm sure could be epic for a great writer there as well. But I think it's that alone. Like what I really enjoy about how you explain that project is literally just in this little thread or this string, there's a mini ecosystem that exists. Like you can just already imagine how the thing's supplied on the ground, how it's all structured, then all the cargo going up. It's amazing. So epic work on that one for sure. You mentioned it took 2 years to make, or around about that long. If you had a clean run at it and it wasn't over time, how long do you think it would take you?
Weeks, honestly, weeks. I think a lot.
Mm.
Now I have the knowledge. Um, Now I have the background, and if it was my full-time job, a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
I think I could really pull it together. It's just like I said, I was doing this
Oh, of
nine
course.
like crazy hours, and it wasn't really my priority. And what I actually submitted for the first round of the competition was almost completely research with Blender screenshots, which is what you'll
Right.
find if you Google me. Do not Google
Right.
me. That is
Okay.
the shitty screenshots. Um, and a lot of this is also I'm developing. I'm not a finished article. I'm proud to be a concept artist and a professional. Um, but I'm constantly learning. I'm not Cole Price. I'm not a world renowned concept artist, or Pablo. But I'm learning from people like Pablo and Cole and Nick Staff, and I'm constantly, although I feel good in my own abilities, I'm constantly learning. And what that means is Pablo Dominguez gave me a few tips that I would now use, which would save me a lifetime. I
Mm,
also invested in a computer, and with the winnings of this competition, I got a really good computer. So
nice.
previously, although I know tools don't make an artist, they do impact. That's the number one thing. I'd say if you're being bottlenecked by your computer, which I was,
Mm,
it is worth the investment, because
mm,
what would take me, I was rendering Windows. What's the official word? Render regions. So I was
Yeah,
selecting
yeah,
a
yeah.
region and I was breaking up each render into 10 parts, and I would draw a square, render, draw a square, and then stitch it together later, because it was taking
Wow.
days to render, genuinely days. And that was partly my computer, but that was also my lack of knowledge. I knew Blender well, but I didn't have the Pablo Dominguez tips that I have now. So I now know I would link the files, and I would use assets that were all completely linked together and everything. So the way, I hope not giving any secret away, but a lot of these big concept artists, when they're doing a huge city or something with real detail and scope, you'll have one Blender file that links, and then around that you might have another file with all your assets and another file with the different assets, and you're kind of linking everything in, and it runs 10 times quicker, and it's crazy, and it's so much more usable.
Jordan, it's been incredible. We have to wrap up, sadly. So many more questions I could definitely ask you, specifically just about this project alone, let alone more. But yeah, final thoughts or words from yourselves before we head off.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy I came and said hello in December. Hopefully we meet again soon in person.
Yeah, for sure.
If anybody sees me at any of these events, just please come and say hello. I'm a nice guy. It'd be really nice to speak to everybody. I want to be in the bubble. Come into my bubble. Let's share bubbles. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thanks so much.